Welcome to Digitally Creative. I'm your host, Vincent Ferrari. And before I even get started, I want to apologize for my voice because I know it sounds terrible. I have no idea why. I have been dealing with having basically no voice for the last 4 days. So I was just hoping that it would come together well enough so that I could actually record today, because today I have the privilege of recording with a very good friend of mine who went from idol to buddy, which is kind of cool. I have the one and only Steve McDonald. What's going on, buddy? How you doing?
I'm very good, Vincent. Thank you very much. And you good self?
I am wonderful. I've been having so much fun this morning. One of the things that I've gotten from you, mainly from you, but from other people, but mainly from you,
Hmm.
is that especially the group, because the Facebook group, your Facebook group is one of the best things that ever happened to me, because you see so many people doing such crazy, amazing things, and it just inspires you to not sit on your butt. And I have started doing more art for art's sake, just
Yeah,
for the sake of doing something fun and something I enjoy and something that doesn't necessarily have to sell. I mean, I don't mind selling stuff, but
yeah.
man, it's you have really over the 2 years that I've known you, you've really changed my opinion on what I need to spend my time doing,
Oh,
and
that's
I'm
good.
trying to get better at doing it. So,
Yeah, I mean, it is great. I love sharing my craft and I love sharing my art and I love sharing my failures and successes as well on YouTube and on the channel and with the members group. But I'm like you, there has to come a point where art and craft and things like that needs to be for your soul, for your mind, for your body's
yeah.
well-being. And I think when as long as we do that, then we still have and gain as much pleasure from the work side of it as we do from our personal. Because I think if we take that away from our personal side, we're actually depriving ourselves a little bit, and we shouldn't deprive ourselves of something we're absolutely passionate about.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
last
I mean,
week
as I told the group the other day, I was feeling a bit down. And one of the things that really makes me feel good about myself, and I thoroughly enjoy, is just making paper flowers. So
mhm.
I don't know what it is about them. They just inspire me. They give me time to think, and they always look pretty afterwards.
I see the problem of not partaking in doing stuff personally. I see that a lot from people that are either full-time makers or even makers that are, to an extent, makers that are content creators. I mean, every time I've had someone on, to some extent, I've been like, so what do you do in your personal time? And rarely it's what they do as a content creator or as a business owner. It's usually something else. And it's like,
Mm,
wow, and I understand, I do understand, that sometimes you burn yourself out doing this kind of stuff, but I almost feel like it's kind of sad. Like, oh, you don't want to do this for fun anymore. Like, you don't
yeah.
see it as a passion or a fun thing, and there's nothing wrong with seeing it as a business. I am very much business oriented,
Oh,
but I'm starting
absolutely.
to
Me
see
too.
the, what's that?
Me too. Yeah, very much
Yeah.
business orientated. But
I'm starting to see the benefits to my own mental health and I showed Steve, and I won't, maybe I'll show it. I don't know. But I showed Steve what I was working on this morning before we started recording. And it was just so much fun to make. It was one of the
yeah,
funnest things I've done in so long, and I'm still looking, like, I have it on my desk right now, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, "That's so damn cool." Like, I'm
yeah,
in love with it, and I'm like, that's the fun that I always feel like just gets sucked right out of it for me, because I don't make a conscious effort to keep it there.
and I think that's what's important as well. I mean, I've mentioned this before in my videos and things like this, but I actually sit at night. I have hundreds, not hundreds. I probably have about 35, 40 of these, which are my doodle books, and I sit at night just doodling when I'm watching television. And I mean, being colorblind, I just color them in at whatever color I want to color them in at. And I have books and books. Always keep them in a book, hard covered book, because that way I can keep them and I can keep looking at them and enjoying them. And I get so much pleasure out of this sort of thing. And so, yeah, absolutely, you should definitely be doing it for pleasure too, without a
I think
doubt.
the funny part is when they cross over. So I was just telling Steve before we started last week, I had made a wall art piece for myself. And I was like, "You know what? What the hell? I'll just put it up for sale and see if it sells." And it sold in 4 hours. And then back in October, Steve, in the Facebook group that he has, had a challenge to make something, for fall, and it had to be fall and funky. That was That
That
was
was the
the prompt for it, and I've shown it before, but I made this copper leaf pendant that I was really proud of. It was the first time I ever really did some, like, dapping and proper jewelry techniques to make a piece of metal jewelry, and it was like I was like, "This is beautiful," and I was like, immediately put it up for sale, and then it took a while, but it did actually sell, and I'm like, "Yeah, because this was a passion project.
yeah.
This wasn't just something I was making to sell. This was something I put a lot of love and attention into to make sure it was really good." And yeah, it took a little while to sell, but it did sell. Somebody connected with it and loved it.
Mm.
And I think that's what you lack when you pull the passion out and you kinda make it this cold, clinical, sterile business thing. When you're not passionate about what you're making, it may still be mechanically good, but I feel like there's an extra little bit of unspoken juju that goes along with something when it's made with a lot of love.
I think if you're putting passion and soul into something, it comes through definitely. Even if it's not a pretty piece. I mean, I've made some what I consider to be ugly pieces. In fact, I'll show you one of my ugly pieces if it's allowed.
When your body of work is big
This is
enough,
one of my
ugly comes with
ugly
the
pieces
territory.
that I made, and it's a jar upcycle, and it was a jar. It
I
had
remember
pickle in
that.
it, and I coppered it. I put some of my own paste on it as well to get it, and it's come out really ugly. But do you know it has pride of place in my studio because it's where I put firstly my paper flowers when I make them before the family have taken them and said, yeah, we want those. And secondly, I made it at a time when I was feeling a bit grumpy and a bit low about things as well. And to me, it just represents so much of my own passion. So it's
Right.
ugly, but I would never sell it because I don't think anyone would buy it. But it's to me, it represents my happy creative making. That's what it represents. Sorry, I'm not sure if you caught any of that. To me, it represents my happy making, just playing, just for the
Mhm.
fun of playing and experiencing what the materials are going to do and how it's going to come out.
It is pretty awesome when you're just making something, just trying to see where it goes, and then all of a sudden you start. I think you hit a turning point with a lot of projects. I know I do, where it's like, this is a cool idea I had. Let's just see where it goes. And then you hit that point where it's like when you're driving on the highway, when you start to get to the open road and your foot naturally just pushes a little further on the
Yeah,
accelerator, like you're like, oh, let's go, let's go.
yeah,
We're getting there now. Like, this is the right path. We're going in the right direction now.
yeah. And the other thing is, it builds your creativity doing something that you're not worrying about. It also builds up your muscle memory
Mhm.
of well of using things and using your hands, but it also builds your confidence as well that it's okay to make things that aren't necessarily factory beautiful. And I
Mhm.
think that's what's really important about crafters and creativity. And it isn't factory made. It is
Mhm.
unique to you. It is that's what should inspire you to feel confident in that piece, whether it turns out well or not.
One of my weakest skills, and I've said it for a couple of years, my weakest skill is painting, like, by far.
Yeah,
I'm a terrible painter, and I have just made a conscious effort to get better at it. Like, I just
yeah,
whenever I have the opportunity to do a project, I try to incorporate some painting into it now.
mm,
And little by little, I'm starting to see the muscle memory. I'm starting
yeah,
to see the understanding of the techniques to get things to cover better, even with cheap craft paints.
mm,
And I'm not going to lie, if you use really good acrylics, it's a very different ball game. I have an $80 set of acrylics that I bought
yeah,
because I wanted to see what really good acrylics were like. I understand why they're $80. It's
yeah,
a
that,
very different kind of paint.
yeah,
But in using those, I also started to like, okay, so why are these better? Well, they cover better. Okay, so how do I make the cheap ones cover better? And
yeah,
what I figured out, and this was just me going, okay, what can make this cover better? Do a first coat, first start using gesso. Started using gesso. That alone just changed everything. Instead of using the primer I was using, I started using gesso as a primer. That alone changed everything.
yeah,
It slows you down, but it's totally worth it. But the second thing was, don't be afraid to do a lot of coats. Like, just
absolutely.
do a lot of coats, even with the cheap paints. And it's like, yeah, you can really
And if
get
you've
by
got
with
some
some
really,
pretty.
really cheap, thin acrylic paint, if you chuck a bit of PVA glue or wood glue or Elmer's glue, as they call it in the States,
Mhm.
school glue, in with the paint, just a little bit,
Yeah.
mix it in, you'll get a great coverage.
Yeah. These craft paints, and the funny thing is, like, all right, maybe in the first and second coat, you'll be like, "Oh boy, this is gonna take forever." Usually by the 3rd or 4th coat, it really pops, and what I figured out is all you have to do is hit it with a heat gun. If you're in a hurry, a heat gun and
Yeah,
acrylic paint are a great combination
yeah,
because the little piece that I showed you this morning has 4 coats on it, and I did it in an hour.
yeah,
Because I mean, granted, you're not supposed to take a 3D print and hit it with a heat gun. That's kinda dumb. I readily admit that that was stupid, but I understand. I've been working with 3D prints long enough that I know how long I can cheat and
you
keep
can,
the heat
yeah,
there. But wow, it's like, oh my god, so I could put like 4 coats on an hour. So really the benefit of the other ones, okay, granted, they're more pigmented, but
yeah,
all right, so I'm not doing 1 coat, I'm doing 4, but I'm using cheap paints and I have every color under the sun and a few
yeah,
that aren't even under the sun.
yeah.
So, but this is all stuff that, like, I used to just go, "I just don't like painting." But now
Mm.
it's like, well, why don't I like painting? Like, what's wrong with it? What's the process that I'm not getting? What's the result I'm not getting, and why don't I like it? And again, this is a lot of hanging out in that group because I see people trying things that they've never done before, and it's like, well, dude, if they can try stuff they've never done before, you can paint.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that is the nice thing about the members group, and it's the members group that Vincent's referring to here for my members of my channel. It is a safe haven. What was really important for me when I set that up, even when there was only a few people in it, it's not a big group now. It was all
There's
about
like
making,
330 people in that group.
yeah,
That's a
about
pretty big
300,
group.
yeah, about 330. It was all about making a community, not an
Mhm,
environment, a community of people who were going to feel confident in sharing not only their questions and supporting others, but sharing their concerns, sharing their worries about their work, and also sharing when they were trying something new. And I think
mhm,
that safe space is something that I will protect vehemently because
sure.
it's so important to me that that is an area that our members can just really enjoy and feel safe in, because so many social media spaces now have people in there that will be very nasty and critical, and not give anybody the benefit of the doubt. They'd rather be say something negative than positive and
Mhm.
not support people. And I don't I can't I wouldn't have that in that group.
But I'll tell you the truth, as a moderator in the group, right?
Yeah.
As a moderator in the group, I see every, I'm granted I can't be there all day long. None
Mm.
of the 3 of us are, right?
No,
But
no, not at all.
I've had to remove surprisingly few posts in the
Yeah,
last year or so. I mean, minimal number
yeah,
of posts. I think I've removed 3, and they
yeah.
weren't even like people being nasty to each other. It was like selling links and stuff like that,
Yeah,
which obviously
and
we don't
they
allow
make
in the group.
mistakes. They make mistakes like that because that's understandable. And the reason I don't have selling links or memes or all that sort of thing in the group is because the timeline is a really popular group and a lot goes on it. There's loads of posts in it.
It moves fast every day. It
Oh
really
yeah,
does.
absolutely. So if we start allowing people to put selling links and memes and videos that aren't theirs in the group, then actually the timeline just gets caught up with those, and the real important questions or the really important posts get mixed in
Mhm.
with that and get diluted and then missed. And that's why we don't.
Which which would be kind of a shame because the one thing that the group really does well, and this is this goes back to like the way the maker community is structured too, and why makers, the wider your network, the better. But one of the things that's great about the group is that there's somebody in that group that knows how to do just about anything you want to do.
Absolutely.
It's incredible. Like you can ask a question about just about anything, you know, granted, if you ask a question about welding and stuff like that, you might not get an answer. But if you're asking a question about what paint covers what, and what to use as a primer, and what surfaces work, and what kind of resin, and what resin to use for a mold, I guarantee you, there's more than one person in that group
Oh,
that knows how to
absolutely.
answer stuff.
Yeah, and that's the nice thing. We have built up a nice group of experts in there, and
Mhm.
those experts aren't all resin experts. We have crochet expert, we have card making expert, we have a technical expert, we have woodworking experts. We've got probably about 8 or 9 people that are now experts and labeled as experts because they have such a good expertise in those areas, and they're always willing to help and share. And I think that is what the crafting community needs to be about more than anything. I don't like this. Competitiveness is not the right word I'm looking for, because actually I think we're all maybe a little bit competitive with ourselves more than with each other. But I don't like this negativity that is surrounding some of the other groups. I think that to me is destructive, and it's also, social media is stressful enough without having that sort of thing happening.
That should if this episode had a title other than your name, that would be it. Social media is stressful enough.
Absolutely.
It's interesting you say that the competitions with ourselves, because when I had my friend Christian on a couple of episodes ago, he and I were talking about this, and we said the same thing basically, that when we're doing this kind of stuff, the thing that makes the maker community different is that the competition is turned inward. That we
Yeah,
look at I look to be better than myself. I'm not trying to be better than Steve. I'm not trying to be better than the people in
absolutely.
the group. I'm actually putting my stuff in the group more to say, hey, this is what I made. I think it's pretty cool. You guys make a lot of stuff. What do you think? Can you give me suggestions? And I think I think every interaction you have with other makers, as opposed to in other communities, but generally with
Mm,
other makers, is the implicit understanding that, hey, I'm showing you this. I'd love some feedback because I respect your opinion on what I do.
yeah,
Not, hey, this is how great I am. Look at me. I'm amazing. Nobody does that. I mean, well, okay, not nobody, but very few
but
people do that.
yeah. And I also think that we, as creators and creative people and crafters and artists, have a really high level of imposter syndrome,
Yes.
where we actually don't think we are good enough. And I think that is where our own self competition comes into play, because we're actually trying to compete against ourselves because we're always feeling that we're imposters to it. Now, I know that I've done a whole series on my second channel, and it will be a series that probably never ends, of me trying to be a abstract painter because I absolutely love abstract art. And I honestly believe, much to my own regret, and I'm quite embarrassed to say, I honestly believe that abstract art was literally just a case of getting a canvas and slopping some paint onto it, and it would look beautiful. How wrong was I? This is a real art, and I can see why people have studied it for years and years and years. Um, I am slowly starting to not love, but like the stuff that I make. But I know that I've got a lot more improving to do, and I'd like to go on a course. I'd like to find myself some time to go on a course to learn more abstract painting techniques. I think as well, what hinders me and my own self doubt is around the fact that I am colorblind, so I never really know what color I'm putting down onto a piece of paper unless it tells me on the tube. But then I was using burnt umber the other day, and I had burnt umber and burnt sienna. They look exactly the same colour to
Almost the
me.
same color.
They do. It look exactly the same colour. So I had to Google what colour is burnt umber, what colour is burnt sienna. Because
But you
without doing that, I had no idea what colours they were. So
But I think to an extent, now, just playing devil's advocate here, I think to an extent that's a good thing though, because the fact that you're colorblind means you don't have preconceived notions about what colors work together. See, a lot of times the limitations that we bump into aren't really limitations; they're just kind of trends and traditions and things like, oh, you never put yellow and blue together. Well, why the hell not?
yeah, I mean,
And it's like
I put them all together all the time, but then I wouldn't know if I was putting yellow and blue together, or whether I was putting orange and blue together,
orange and blue is a big one, yeah.
purple, or because they all look the same to me. So
Hmm.
I would like to be able to see them. I mean, I've tried those glasses and I've tried the contact lenses, and actually they make no difference to me whatsoever, and which is a shame. But it's like when I painted the castle that I showed you earlier. When I took it inside, it was like, why have you painted it purple? Bricks aren't purple. I was like, oh yeah, but there's a grey wash got to go over that. So I came outside and quickly made a grey wash and put some grey dry brushing on it and a grey wash on it, and now it looks better, because I just thought they looked grey. I didn't realise they looked purple.
what I'm amazed at, so I was just looking it up while you were talking, and the last time you were on the podcast was August 11th of 2021. So it's
Yeah.
been a minute. I mean, obviously you and I have been in contact since then, plenty, but
Yeah, yeah. A lot. A good friendship came out of it.
yes.
It was definitely really beneficial to me. That
Same
podcast.
here. Same here.
Thank
I've
you.
had a lot of interesting benefits come from being friends with you, and it's been wonderful actually. Um, I'm amazed at how much. So when I had you on last time, you were pretty much a resin guy. You really didn't do much of anything else that wasn't resin. You were resin, 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 and you got known as the resin guy, and people come to expect that you're going to do resin related projects. But over that time, I mean, it's it's amazing how many other things you've started to explore. Your second channel is way bigger than it was then. I think you had just started your
I
second
just
channel when I
started
had you
the
on.
second channel. Yeah, I mean, resin. Been doing resin for a lot of years,
Mhm,
and it was just one of the crafts that I used to do. And in fact, my resin, the little room that I use or the studio I use for resin used to be my crafting studio completely. So
mhm.
I used to do a bit of resin, used to do a lot of crafting. I've always done lots of other crafts and loved them. It came down to when I thought to myself, right, I want to do this as a YouTube channel. I need to niche down. I don't want at this stage to be one day doing resin so people watch my channel and then for another 2 or 3 weeks there's no resin on it, because that's not what they want. They want one thing and they want to
They want a
learn it.
steady diet of things, yeah.
Absolutely. So that's why I did it. So in the background, I was always doing my other crafting for myself, like we were talking before. I always loved to make things out of other things and upcycle, and I've always liked to try new crafts and things like that. And then I just thought to myself, once the resin channel got to a good size, I thought to myself, yeah, I'm going to set up a channel now. I don't care if the second channel does well or not. It's not about that. What it's about for me is just enjoying it and showing that, crafting for me is so important. Art and
Mhm.
craft is so important. So that's really why. But yeah, I've always kind of done it in the background, um, just behind the channel.
It blows my mind sometimes watching you, and I think one of the reasons that you and I click as friends is because we learn very similarly.
Mm.
We are, and I know Jazza uses this term a lot, and I still don't know if it's a real term or not.
Kinesthetic learner.
Yes, he uses that term all the time, and I'm not. Is it a real term or
It
is
is
it
a
a
real
made up
term, yeah.
term?
Kinesthetic learner. When I was working at the university as director of learning and teaching, we used to we didn't use that term in front of students, but it was a term that was bandied about. Uh, we called it work-based learning or task-based learning. So
Mhm.
people would learn by doing, and
Right.
that is certainly. I can read how to do something,
Sure.
and not that I read instructions very often, but I really should. But if I have a go at it, or I see somebody else doing it and I do it at the same time as somebody else is doing it, I learn much quicker.
Oh yeah, and so for me, I've been doing a lot lately with with foil leafing. I'm not even gonna call it gold leafing because I've a little bit of everything. And what I've learned is like, the first it took a really long time for me to try it for the first time. I was really scared. Like, I'm gonna screw this up. It's gonna look terrible. It's gonna be a waste of my time. But then just one day I was like, you know what? Screw it. Just do it. And I made one of the coolest art pieces I've ever made, ever, with my first attempt at gold leafing, and I'm like, "Okay, I know how to do this now." Like, there's definitely things on it that I would have improved 100%, but it was that first that first dabble into it, it was like, "Oh," I got all this confidence from watching other people do it, but I didn't fully understand what I was doing until I did it, and I screwed some of it up, and I wasn't happy with some of it, and the rest of it I was, like, super happy with, like, but I learned so much doing it, and I realized that, like, I am a kinesthetic learner because I did, if you look at the most recent piece I just did, which will be on my Instagram probably by the time this episode goes live, because I just finished it this morning. I finished gluing it together. I just had to do some detail work on it. But the leaf work on it it's really good. Like, I'm even looking at it going, I can see the evolution of the skill as I've done it more. And that's because I was doing it, not because I was sitting there going, "Okay, I have to read how to make this better." It's like, "No, just keep doing it until it gets better. Just keep doing it
Absolutely.
until it gets better."
I think the two were no. There's three things. Three worst enemies of leaf working are not using the right glue,
Mhm.
because you need a good leaf glue. It doesn't have to be expensive leaf glue, but you need a good leaf glue that's going to stay sticky once it's dry. The second problem with leafing is never trying it and
Yeah.
having a go and not having a go because you think, oh, I'm going to mess this up. And the third one is static. Okay, the biggest enemy of
Yes.
leafing is static.
That stuff sticks to
Everything,
everything. It's
everything.
amazing. These little thin if you think anyone who thinks glitter sticks everywhere,
It's
try leafing.
nothing.
Try
It's
leafing.
nothing on it. I mean,
But it
and don't throw away all your scraps either. I scoop all my scraps into a pot, and then
oh, I
I then do things like this. This is resin creep that
uh-huh.
I poured that I wanted to leaf, so I just used all like my scraps and things on it, and I love
Perfect.
it.
Perfect. Yeah, so what I've been doing is, like, I'll work on something, and if it's not quite working out then
Yeah,
I'll grab the leaf scraps and use that as patches whenever I can. Because
absolutely.
you can really get away with patching leaf
Oh,
over
absolutely.
itself really
Yeah.
well, like, you can't tell. It's
No,
amazing stuff.
no,
It's
I
so
do
much
love
fun
it.
too because it adds a bit of class, and it's making me it's like, so the piece that I put on my wall, and I'll show it in the video as we're talking, but the piece I did on my wall,
Mm,
I scored the masking on a piece of acrylic, and then
hmm.
in where I took the, masking away, I painted with the gilding glue, and I just
Yeah,
laid the sheets on and brushed it, and then peeled away all the masking, and it left it like I had masked off the leafing. And I didn't even know you could do that. I just tried it. Like, if
no,
I had read, I couldn't find anyone that was doing, like, I know what I
no.
did, and I can't find anyone that did it.
Yeah,
But it's such a fun thing to do that I put off doing for so long. It was
and
so dumb of me.
if you use the metal leaves rather than the gold leaf, it is so inexpensive as well. It is
Yeah.
not expensive at all, and you get
The
so many different colours. That's the lovely thing about it.
yeah, it's made me wanna do, like, I've been doing these Hamzas.
Hmm.
And they are just turning out beautiful. I figured out my buddy at New York Woodworks, Big Al Schultz, gave me a Hamza file. He made small ones, and I was like, "Well, I'm just gonna make this into giant wall art." So I took this little thing that he gave me the sample. He's like, "Hey, here's the thing." I was like, "Can I have that file?" But he gave me the small one, and it was, I don't know, 3.5 inches. So what, 80
Hmm.
millimeters? And I took I took it. I made it 13 inches.
Yeah.
So it's gigantic, but it looks so cool when you put leaf on it or you do a cool painting treatment. Like the
Mm,
most recent one, I did a blue backer for it, and I dry brushed silver acrylic over the blue. So there's streaks of silver, and then I silver leafed the cutout part and I attached them together. And
mm.
I'm just making this stuff, and I'm like, where is this coming from? This is so much fun. I want to just do this all the time. And I feel like a little kid that discovered a new toy. Like, I
Mm.
went into my closet and I found a toy I haven't played with for a while, and now it's the only toy I wanna play with.
Yeah, I I know that feeling really well because when I you make something, I have to stop myself on this channel on the second channel, then doing the next 10 videos on that one thing because I'm like you, I just want to do it all the time.
You're treating your crafting the way, Facebook and Instagram treat your likes. Like, if you like something on Facebook or Instagram, they figure it's the only thing you ever wanna see again, and they never
Absolutely,
show you anything
absolutely.
else.
So I have to be very very careful about doing that because if not, for the next 10 resin videos would all be on the new UV resin, the high viscosity stuff that I've discovered,
Oh, can I just
and
tell
how
you?
that works and all the different things that you can do on that. And that would just get boring. But I love using it. And in the second channel, it would all be about my own recipe for air dry clay, the different ones that I've made, and how
Mhm.
to use those because I've made so much of it in the last couple of weeks because I've made so many different projects with it. It's just I've got to stop now and go on to something else.
One of the things I love about you and the content you make is that it's not just project-based content. Sometimes you do make just reference content.
Yeah,
And what I love about it is you just did a video. I just literally just watched it either Friday or yesterday about the different types of UV resin
yeah,
and what to use them for. And I actually have a bunch of those already, which is funny because I was like, I know I have them. I'm just not 100% sure when to use what. You make great reference content sometimes where it's like, this is a good thing to just know that, oh, yeah, Steve made a video about this. I got to find it. In fact, a lot of the chatter in the group sometimes is, I know Steve made a video about this. What video was that? Can someone help me find it? Because you do a lot of stuff that's not just like, hey, this is a project I made. Sometimes it's, hey, this is the crappy resin you're not supposed to use because it's trash.
yeah, absolutely. And
you
I
know?
think even though those videos don't tend to get the higher views, which they don't actually, it's not about that for me. It's always been about, for me, being honest and open with my subscribers and with my viewers, and helping them as well, helping them see what I use and why I use it and why I choose what I use. And I thought to myself, there are these 4 UV resins out there that
Mhm.
I'm aware of, and they all have very different jobs. But how many people know that they're out there, and how many people know that by just using the correct UV resin, you're actually going to get a far nicer dome or a flat level surface or whatever?
Sure.
So that's why I do that, because I want to pass on and help people, really. I want to encourage people to keep crafting rather than encourage people to maybe use something that they didn't get a good result from because it wasn't their fault. It was the product that they were using, um, and then give up. I would hate that to happen.
Well, it's become obvious the more I know you and the more I watch your process and the more you talk about the videos even before you release them in the group,
Mm.
that your process isn't just here's a cool thing and that's it.
No,
You
absolutely
go
not.
through. I remember when you were testing the different resins
Yeah,
and you were like, yeah, this test has been going on for 6 months. And it's like,
yeah,
what? six
yeah.
months. And in fact, I think it ended up being when you finally did it, it was like 8 months from when you had
8 months.
started.
Yeah, I started it. I wanted to make sure it got through the summer, because that was really important as well, because I wanted to see
Mhm.
what happened with some UV light on some of the resins. From starting that video, planning it was actually a 10-month process because I wanted people to really see. So I had the idea, I ordered the resins, which obviously weren't cheap either because I had to order, I think I ordered 8 different resins.
I know one of those
All
brands wasn't cheap because I have
the
had some of it.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not going to mention the brand on here because that wouldn't be fair, and I did mention it in the video.
Mhm.
But it's one of the most expensive brands out there, and it came out the
Mhm.
worst out of all the categories that I did. So from the beginning to the end, yeah, it was about 10 months from planning to final filming and final edit. But I did that because I know so many people that start resin for the very first time go for that brand, and it is the most expensive brand I think that's out there of a craft
I
resin.
think
And
I think it actually is the most
yeah,
expensive brand
and
by a
it's the worst
mile.
one. It yellows really quickly. It creates lots of bubbles. You can't cast with it. It
It never
doesn't
really
cure well.
cures. It
It
does
never
not
will.
cure. And okay, so I had it. It was the first resin I ever bought.
Mm.
I had it.
And
I
me,
was ha
and me.
I was happy with how clear it was. One thing it does do, it does get really clear. I can't even argue that. It gets
Mhm.
beautifully clear. But I never quite got that nice hard texture from it.
No,
And I always thought like, am I just dumb? Like, and sometimes you know what you think you are. So my next step after that was one that makers love, which is Total Boat. And
yeah,
I mean, makers Total Boat is like ubiquitous in the maker community.
yeah,
And the first time I used it, I got perfect results, and I'm like, "Okay, I'm clearly not an idiot. Maybe this isn't as good as every influencer was telling me it is." So then I tried the J Diction stuff,
mm,
and again, perfect results on the first try, and I'm like, okay, clearly, clearly it's not me. Like it's and you have that moment where you just feel like vindicated. But if you don't know that there's somebody else out there who grabbed this resin off the shelf because they had also heard it was really good and they've also failed, you would get that you'd fail at it and you'd be instantly discouraged by it.
Absolutely, and that's why I did that video. Certainly, with that took so long, and unfortunately, it's because some of these companies put an awful lot of money behind their the creator community. They'll sponsor videos. Now, I'm not saying I don't take sponsorship, because believe me, I do. It's one of the ways that I can keep going. But I have a hard and fast rule with any person that wants to sponsor me with something that's new is, yes, you must send it to me, and you must send it to me free of charge. And before I even promise to make any sort of video on it, I need to test it. I'm currently doing that with 2 polyurethane resins that are available in the States at the moment through a company. And they sent me that stuff probably 2 months ago, and that will take me another probably 2 months, 3 months before I'll get back to them. Because if they want to sponsor me, I'm not going to be sponsored for a product that I think is an absolute load of rubbish. And I would say that a good 50 or 60% of companies that send me stuff don't get to have a sponsored video or listed on it. And this is what I do with it. I turn it into blocks, and I use these blocks as weight. And these are 2 resins that failed the test. Look how yellow they are. And these were meant to be deep pore resins.
Yeah, what are you supposed to do with that? If you make an art project out of that, that would just be a complete fail.
There was one company that sent me a resin that was absolutely, and this again was another art resin company, but I refused to use their resin in any of my videos. Even though it doesn't go yellow, it's a deep pore resin, but it's full, absolutely full of bubbles.
It's not clear at all.
Dissipate as bubbles. So that again, I said, no, I'm sorry. So I just make blocks out of them and use them for weights when I'm gluing cardboard and things.
That's the perfect thing to do with it. I mean, you're just using it in bulk at that point. And I actually completely understand that, because why waste it? You can't just throw it in the garbage. You're not supposed to do that. So
Absolutely. And so I'm very, very careful about anybody who wants to sponsor a video for me.
People who've used your so it's interesting, because you're one of the few people who I look at and go, if he's saying this, I know what it went through, because I've bought a lot of the stuff that you've talked about, or that you've used, that you've had as a sponsor. And in fact, just recently, it's really funny that we're talking about this now, because literally just this past Wednesday, I started a project, and I'd never used. I bought your art kit when it came out. I bought it as soon as it was available in the States. I bought it the day it became available, because it was like, I know I have a lot of this stuff, but this will be some nice little supply, like gap filler type supplies. And one of the things in the box was the J Diction, it's the classic or the low viscosity, whichever it is.
The classic.
Yeah, it's the classic.
UV resin, yeah.
And I had never used theirs before. The brand I've been using for years, basically, it's not available anymore. It was just a small Chinese brand. It was very good. I've made a lot of stuff with it. I bought probably about 6 bottles of it over the last 4 years. Like, it's really good stuff, but it's not around anymore. So I've been on the hunt for a new one. And when I started it's a stained glass Hamza. It's basically it's like the same cutout Hamza I've been using, but I'm filling all the gaps with dyed UV resin to make it look like stained glass. And that was what I wanted to do. So I started working on it. I've been really happy with it. But one of the things I was most happy with was how well this stuff cures with ink in it. Because if you not worked with UV resin, it doesn't usually like to have anything in it at all.
No,
anything that distorts light that can affect the curing process. And for some reason, this stuff with alcohol inks, and obviously you have to be very sparse with how much you put in.
Yeah.
But it really is like, wow. And it cures like a rock with the light that your kit comes with, which, by the way, I always mock these little lights. And I've had a bunch of them, and I've thrown a bunch of them away because they're trash. This one, by some freaking miracle, actually works.
Well, it's not kind of I can see how you'd think it was a miracle, because I was absolutely like you. I had so many of those small little lamps before and chucked them out. So when I approached J Diction about doing a kit for me, I said, I need to test every single thing that you're putting in this kit. And I tested probably 10 of those little lamps before we set on one that worked, because they just don't work normally. So the little lamp that comes in my kit, it came in my kit. I think it's I always said I want the kit to be a limited run. I don't want this to be something that goes on and on and on. I want it to be a limited run, and it was, and it completely sold out in the UK. And I think we doubled the amount that we had in America, and I think there's 40 kits left now. That's it in America to be sold. So when I went, absolutely, that UV lamp was, there was so much time and effort went into that as
When I
well.
when I think about that kit, so that kit was what, $40 US,
Yeah, about
$45 US?
$45. It saved you about, I think it was a saving of about $20 if you were to buy those things separately.
Just on the things that I've gotten from that kit that I actually will use. I know I'm gonna use them. There were the leaf flakes, which are useful to me.
Yeah,
The lamp, which I never thought I would use, but it was the only thing I had to I mean, my UV torch is powerful, but, it's not as fast.
yeah,
And then the resins, the J Diction resin and the J Diction UV resin, and the little mixing vessels, the
yeah,
tiny ones that you can pour from. I was like, "Okay, that's the value of the kit right there."
yeah,
And it's
absolutely.
funny, I see a lot of these kits, and it's like, that's just 90% filler, which is fine too, because I have to remember that a lot of times these kits are going to people that don't have a bunch of stuff. I happen to have a bunch of stuff, so it's
Yeah,
always gonna be duplicates. But the duplicates are actually like the pin vise that you put in the kit is actually better than the pin vise I've been using. Like, it's more substantial, it feels nicer in the hand, it holds the bits better. I'm like, "Alright, well, I guess I'm gonna use this one from now on." Like,
for
you
me,
know?
it was all about making sure the quality was there, and it took us
Mhm.
about I think it was about 6 months to put the kit together from start from me proposing it to it actually coming out. The other thing is what I wanted was I have seen so many art kits. I saw one recently, and and they sold out as well. And it was a molding kit for plaster of Paris, and it had one mold in it, a bag of plaster of Paris, and a couple of other things, and it was on sale for $90. And you could have bought that, you could have purchased all that stuff probably for about $25, $30, but because it had this particular person's name on, it sold out really, really well. And it was just a rip-off, to be honest. And I wanted to make sure that my kit was good value for money and saved you money. And yeah, and I learned that actually from Jazza, because I bought a couple of Jazza's kits. In fact, I probably have
Mhm.
one beside me now, his drawing kits and his pen kits, and they are always exceptional value. Now you're not
Yeah.
being robbed. You're providing something that's not only of quality, but is also giving you good value for money. And I think that's what a kit should be about.
It must be pretty rewarding because the amount of work that goes into sourcing the supplies and sourcing the tools and figuring out where the stuff has to come from, and then you get people that make something with it and go, "I made this all out of the stuff I got from your kit. This stuff is amazing." And I feel bad because I'm probably never gonna make something just from the stuff in your kit, but I've used so much of the stuff in that kit. Like, it was just such a nice bunch of filler tools. It's like, "Oh, good, an extra one of these," but this UV resin made me realize, like, "Oh, this is my new UV resin now," and the bottles of J Diction resin. Because honestly, when you started talking about J Diction, I'm like, "Oh, great, another resin brand, here we go." And I started using it, I'm like, "No, this stuff is actually really good." Like, "Oh, okay, cool."
I was
You know?
looking for a new resin brand, and I kind of fell into J Diction and T Expert as well. I really like the T Expert stuff, and I like to have more than one brand that I work in with because I like to buy it, whichever one's got the best discount at the time, or who are
Or in
offering me
case
the best
like in my
discount.
case, one of them just goes away, like, they're just a small brand that just
Absolutely.
vanishes.
So
Like, what do you
I
do?
like to have more and more. So I fell into J Diction. I needed some UV resin for Project Man. I was quite anti UV resin prior to that because I've never had a good experience with it. Always cured up sticky or didn't cure, or there was problems with it. So I thought I need it for this project. I'll buy this. So I bought it, and I loved it. And I contacted them straight away and said, "Do you know what? This is who I am. You probably have never heard of me, but I just want to let you know how much I have enjoyed using your resin, and it really did what I needed it to do and everything, and left it and didn't expect to hear back from them. But I just wanted to tell them I was so pleased that it had worked. And then they contacted me and said, "Oh, thank you. We've looked at your YouTube channel and all that. Would you like me to send you some more stuff?" So I said, "Oh, yes, please." I never say no to free stuff. I never promised to make them a video or anything like that. And then, so they sent me some of their resin, their epoxy resin, and I used it a couple of times. I thought, yeah, do you know, this is good stuff too. And I tried it out and I used it, and I kind of stuck to it because it's not only good value for money, it's good quality stuff, and that's what's important to me.
Exactly. I think that's one thing that you do better than a lot of the crafting and crafting channels, especially crafting in particular, not as much making, because making is more like you have your tools, here's the materials.
Yeah,
Crafting is very different. Crafting, you're always buying stuff, always,
yeah,
100%. You're always buying molds, you're always buying tools, you're always buying supplies, you're always buying consumables, you're always buying stuff. One of the things you do, clearly you do it consciously because it can't be a fluke, is it's not just value for money, but it's making it approachable because
yeah.
you're not buying, $70 sets of paintbrushes.
No,
And I readily admit that I have a $70 set of paintbrushes.
yeah,
But I also understand that that's not everybody's world. Like they don't want to spend $70 on a set of paintbrushes.
yeah.
But you manage to source out good stuff that's not just good, but also makes crafting approachable for people that, you
And I
know,
think that's what it's about very much. And you're right, it is a conscious decision for me. It is about making it uh, accessible to as many people as possible because I know that at the moment, and especially over the last couple of years, people just haven't had the money to be able to spend on something that gives them pleasure. So
right.
I'm quite happy to use. I mean, I've got a box full here, and all these were purchased by me. My paintbrushes, I one of the shops near me was closing down, so I went and bought them out of paintbrushes, and they're £1.50 a set. Okay, so we were talking about $1.75 a set. I love these
Mhm.
paintbrushes. I use them all the time. They're not quality paintbrushes, but they do the job and they do it well. And
They're disposable. Who
most
cares?
people can find that sort of stuff.
Right. Right. Yeah, I will say my friend Al, New York Woodworks, is I'm readily going to admit that he's a jerk face. And the
Right.
reason he's a jerk face is because I went up to him one weekend to help him work on a project for a
Mm.
client. And I got to use really expensive paintbrushes. And I will say that I understand, like I have cheap ones too, and I use
Yeah.
them just as much. But man, once you use a set of nice brushes, it's like, oh wow.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Of course it is. It's like using really nice, like you said earlier, really nice acrylic paint, or using
Yeah.
real gold leaf instead of the faux metal leaf. Yeah, it is. But if you're making something for yourself, or you're suffering from any sort of anxiety or depression or anything like that, and you just want to create to give yourself that peace
Yeah.
of mind, you can do it on a budget. I could have bought the castle I showed you earlier. I could have bought expensive craft board for that. I could have bought all the expensive things to make that and made that castle. It probably wouldn't have looked any better than what it looks, but it probably would have been easier to make. But do you know what? No, I had loads of Amazon boxes that I cut up, glued together, moved around, and I made the whole thing out of recycled material.
Oh, I
Because for
think
me, it's about it didn't cost me anything to make.
Well, I think that's what some like your channel, I think that's
Mm.
kind of what it naturally encourages by the way you've done it, where it's like, yeah, you can pamper yourself. No, and you're not against like throwing a couple of bucks at something that's better
No,
because it's better. But it's like don't let buying the best be the only way you're going to get into
yes,
something.
yeah,
Just buy whatever you can afford and make the best of it, learn with it, ruin it, screw it up, and
absolutely,
figure out this because like when you're woodworking is a good example. Woodworking is the perfect example. Everyone thinks you need to start out with the best tools possible to get the
yeah,
best results. No, you need to start out with something so that you can start learning how to do the stuff. Once you know how to do the stuff really well, you will figure out where the investment needs to go first. And those
absolutely,
investments are going to be much smarter than just throwing a lot of money into a shop you don't know how to use anything in.
yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And you also are more freer to experiment if you know that you're not going to ruin something that's just cost you a lot of money as well. Be more
I
creative
use
with it.
I use my cheap brushes for gilding glue
Yeah,
because it's like why would I'm never my expensive brushes will never touch gilding glue. But
no,
my cheap ones?
yeah,
Yeah,
of
all
course.
day long. Let's go. you
Yeah,
know. And I keep them like, I even got to the point where I have this one brush that I've always used for the gilding glue. It
yeah,
goes in the drawer next to the glue. That's the one I use for that. I don't even
yeah,
care that it's not with
absolutely.
the
I mean,
rest of them anymore.
I'm fortunate. I like you. I do have a set of expensive brushes. I also have a set of expensive I don't know why, but I have a set of expensive palette knives as well.
Why not?
Um, and and I do have a set of expensive brushes, and they are meticulously looked after. They're not left in water
Mhm.
overnight. I wash them out, I clean them out, I condition them every couple of times I've used them, so that because they're real bristle, um, so I always condition them as well. And they look lovely and they've kept well. But the other ones, I just chuck in a pot. I might go back to them in a couple of days' time, rinse them out, clean them out, wash them out, and then reuse them. And to me, that's great. I love it.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing because you, you when you realize you don't need to spend stupid amounts of money on stupid things that you think you need, you start to have the money when you need to make the upgrades or when you need to do something that's a little that's a little more important to spend the money on. Like one of the things that you really can't get cheap stuff and get good results is molds.
Yeah,
And I see a lot of people, they'll go on Amazon, they'll buy, like, oh, I got this excellent assortment of molds for $6. And it's like, that's not a good deal. Like, I don't even need to see them to know it's probably not a good deal. But, you know, save your money on the resin, save your money on the glitter, save your money on even the inks and pigments. Don't try to save your money on the molds. Good quality molds are a very different thing.
absolutely. Because a good quality mold, you will get a lot longer life out of it. You'll get the finish that you're looking for. It makes a big difference. I mean, there was a lot of Chinese import molds that were happening for quite a while that were, like you say, that were really, really cheap. But
Garbage.
yeah, but you
Complete.
could only get two or three castings out of them, and then they'd gone dull, and you could only get, or they'd rip, or you'd mark and
They
things like
all
that. I mean,
every one that I ever bought deformed. Every
yeah,
single
yeah,
one deformed, even the flat ones. Usually the flat ones are, like, safe because 'cause they're flat.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Even those over time just deformed, and it got to the point where I was like, "Alright, if I'm gonna buy a mold, I'm gonna hold it in my hand, I'm gonna look at it, I'm gonna make sure
Yeah,
it's got some size to it, if it's trash, I'm just sending it back." Like, if you could do the squidgy widgy without any effort, then it's not worth doing this it's not worth it, it's not a
absolutely,
good mold.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah,
You
I totally agree.
You've done a lot for crafters and YouTubers who want to, well, crafters who want to be YouTubers, but crafters who want to start a business. And I've noticed that a lot of the posts in the group aren't just people who are making the stuff that you make or this, stuff that's tangential to the stuff that you make, but it's also people who are wanting to start a craft business or people who want to try to turn it into a side income. And I've noticed particularly recently a lot of the stuff, especially when you do jewelry videos, you talk about that you sell stuff like this. And I'm just is that a passion for you to teach people how to make it into a business as much as it is how to do the crafting or
I think it's a passion for me to empower people. I like
Mhm,
empowering people to have to take control of their own lives if possible. And I think all the years that I worked as a associate professor at the university, obviously in a business school, specializing in small business management, micromanagement, and micro businesses, it taught me that with a little bit of encouragement, with a little bit of support, these people can go on and do some great things. And I've done that
mhm.
through consultancy as well. So yeah, it is a passion of mine to do it, but it's about empowering people. And if I can pass my knowledge on, and I think I mentioned this before in the previous podcast I did when I first started doing resin and sharing all these secrets. I got a lot of hate from other resiners that have YouTube channels and channels saying you're giving too much information away, you're giving too many secrets away. Don't stop doing that. And it's like, no, I'm not going to stop doing it. I'm not going to stop helping people. It's why I set up a channel. So yeah, I want to help people because people are needing now to at least cover their expenses or make a bit of profit on the stuff they're making to allow them to go and buy some more stuff and carry on creating. And if me helping them from a business standpoint can do that, then brilliant. That to me is worthy. It gives me reward as well. I mean, like I said to you before, I'm writing a course that I am going to get out soon on how to set up a crafting business and
Mhm.
how to how to avoid catastrophe if possible. So, and how to make it happen quicker than what perhaps it would happen if you didn't have that knowledge. But yeah, that is important to me, Vincent,
I
definitely.
think I think the key of having knowledge, like having knowledge that dies with you, is kind of useless.
Yeah.
You know, we happen to be lucky. We're not in a time anymore where the village elder has all the village history in his head, and
Mhm.
if he doesn't take someone under his wing and teach them the history, that it dies. I think we're very lucky in that regard, where our knowledge can long outlive us. And when people think about the legacy that they're going to leave on the world, they always think of what building am I going to build, or
Hmm.
what money am I going to have, or what thing am I going to leave to the world. Well, you know what? We all have some knowledge to teach people. And if that's what we leave to the world, then hey, that's pretty damn good, because most people come and go from the world and you never know they were there. So
Yeah,
if you can make an
absolutely.
impact on a couple, even a small group of people, I think it's a wonderful thing. And I never realized that until the podcast ended back in August,
Mm.
and people started telling me how much of an impact this show had on them. And I was like, okay, maybe I should bring it back. Maybe I should bring it back, because
Yeah,
it obviously matters to more than just me. It's not just something I do,
and I
because I
think
enjoy it. It's something that's having an effect.
absolutely, and I think it would be for me not to share the information that I have, and people will do with that information as they wish. They don't have to agree with me, they don't have to accept it, they don't have to act on it. But without me doing that, and the knowledge that I've got has been gained over experience over many many years, education over many many years, research, and it would be irresponsible of me and absolutely selfish, really selfish of me not to support that. I get emails from other YouTubers that are just starting out or growing their channel or at 30,000 views and things, 30,000 subscribers saying, what am I doing? What would you think I could do better? Or how would you make changes? And I will always help them. They're not competition to me. There's millions of YouTube channels out there. One more isn't going to make any difference to me, and
Right.
I still accept support. I don't get it right. I've got so much to learn, and the only way I can learn that is either by learning it through doing, which is what I do, or watching others and how they do it and learning that way. And you know, I don't care if people use my ideas or and things like that, or make what I make and make a video on it. That's fine too. Do you know what I mean? I can't put stuff out into the public domain and not expect it to be used and copied and things like that. And I don't have an issue with that, where I know some YouTubers do.
That's the growth mentality, right? Because you don't have a fixed pie in your mind with
No,
information. And information's not a fixed pie. God, how many times, and just, if you're questioning my logic here, anyone who's questioning my logic as you're listening or watching this, just think about it this way, right? If everything was fixed, then there would be no advancement, right?
absolutely.
Everything would be like, this is the piece, this is the knowledge, we stop here, right? But the fact that every time you try something, most people learn something new every day.
Yeah,
At least in the creative spaces, there's always something new to learn, right? If you're learning something new that frequently, you already understand why there's always room for somebody else.
yeah,
Because if you're learning something new, then everything hasn't been learned already.
absolutely.
That's As long as everything hasn't been learned already, there's space for you in the world, and
My
you can
my
bring something
student,
new.
one of the common things I used to get from my students if I used to set an assignment would be, when in the old days when we used to do essays, and I moved away from essay writing many many years ago because I just felt it was not a great way of learning. You've set this question: how on earth am I going to write 2,500 words on this subject? So and I heard this a lot from one particular group. So I said to them one day, I said, right, come on, we're going on a field trip. And they were really excited. They thought we were going on this big field trip. And I took them to the library. And I
Mhm.
took them to the library and I showed them the section in the library about issues surrounding startup businesses and why
Mhm.
these were important to understand. And I showed them this whole long row and racks of books. Okay, there's probably a good 1,000 books in there on that rack. And I said, each one of those books is different. Each one of those books comes from a different perspective. And each one of those books has probably got about between 30 and 80,000 words in it. So
Sure.
why can't you write 2,500 words on it? Do you think everything that's been said has been said? There is nothing else more. There's nothing more to say, or no new approach to this, or no new angle. And that
Mhm.
really hit home to a lot of them. Do you know what I mean? They say, yeah,
Sure.
actually, you're right. You're right.
Take take out a piano. Look at a piano. There's
Yeah.
88 keys. So
Yeah.
what? There's only 88 songs?
Yeah,
No?
exactly. No,
There's a lot of songs that can be written with those
exactly.
88 notes. It's and I think that, we all people like you and I, like, we say this kind of stuff, and I know that there's certain people who go, "All right, we get it." But it's important to remember because sometimes you'll feel like, the joke is, you're bored. Okay, cool. And somebody say, "Oh yeah, no, I totally reached the end of the internet today because I had nothing to do and I'm just
Yeah,
bored, bored, bored." And I get it. I totally get it. But there's always something out there. There's
of course.
always something out there. And there's a voice that needs to be heard. And you know what? Sometimes that voice might be yours.
Yeah,
So keep
absolutely.
talking.
Absolutely.
Keep talking. Um, why don't we talk about some things of the week because we both have some interesting things this week, and yours is definitely interesting.
So my thing of the week this time, I racked my brains over this. It's a hairdryer. It's just a cheap hairdryer. This one cost me £6.99. So we're talking about $8. Um, and I was racking my brain. It has two speeds. Oh, it's not on, but it has two speeds: warm or even warmer. That's what it has. Um, and I was racking my brain. I went through a lot of different things. I thought, yeah, my glue bottle. That's my thing. No, that's not. My spray bottle. No, that's not my thing. My new scalpel. No, that's not my thing. I thought, what have I used a lot this week? And actually, it is the hairdryer. Because, like you kind of alluded to earlier, it does so many different things.
Mhm.
It dries paint for a start. If you've painted something and you want it to dry, it will dry it. If you want to remove sticky labels off a glass jar, you warm it up with a hairdryer first, it'll peel off. If you want to blow off, like on this, when I made my castle, I put my artificial grass down. There was bits of it everywhere. I needed to get rid of it, so I just used my hairdryer, and it cleared it all up really, really quickly. It it does so much. I made something with some hot glue. I joined a couple of pieces together with hot glue, and I thought, oh, that's not quite the right angle. Oh, what am I going to do now? I heated the hot glue up with the hairdryer, bent it back into shape, let it dry. It was done. I love my tool of the week. I use it. There isn't a day goes by where I don't use the hairdryer for some crafting thing or other. Love it.
Ha Hair dryers, it's interesting you mentioned a hair dryer because literally right before we recorded, I have a heat gun,
Hmm.
and I had a cheaper heat gun, and it's fine. It's actually in my wood shop because it's
Yeah,
good enough for there. But for here, I needed one with, like, fine control and a
yeah.
fan. So I
So one
bought
like
a
this. One is it one like this? So you can go from zero to
Yes, very similar, but it's all digital. Same,
yeah,
it's a
I have
Wagner
it.
one also.
Yeah,
And I went crazy because I'm like, "You know what? I use this enough." Again, this is that experience thing. I use the heat gun enough where it's worth it for me to invest in a really
yeah,
good one with precise controls, right? But once you start using it, you're like, "Okay, this thing does a lot." Like you were saying, takes labels off. It's so good for drying paint, you don't even understand. Like, especially I was working in my wood shop with spray paint, and I was in, like, a hurry. Like, I
mm,
needed to, like, go, go, go. And I was like, "Well, let's give this a go." And I sprayed something with black spray paint, and I hit it with the heat gun, and I think 2 passes with the heat gun, and the paint was dry and cured. Because
yeah,
what people don't realize is paint cures better the hotter it gets.
yeah, yeah,
And it's like, "Okay, there we go." So, yeah, that hair dryer, perfect for 99.9% of people that aren't neurotic people that feel like they need an expensive heat gun, especially resin bubbles.
yeah,
Most resin projects, it's excellent. Heat is excellent at drawing bubbles out. Even if you don't wanna take the risk with fire and a long neck
yeah.
lighter, which, by the way, I have a lifetime supply of long neck lighters now thanks to you.
Never,
Always a
never
lighter,
a torch. Never a
always a
torch.
lighter, never a torch.
Absolutely.
That's so funny. As every time I grab one, I say the same thing. Just like
Yeah,
always a lighter, never a torch.
absolutely.
But yeah, it's that's a good one. A hair dryer, and especially considering, like, God, if you're really, really strapped for cash, go to the Goodwill. You'll probably find at least one or
Absolutely. Yeah,
two sitting
yeah,
on the shelf there for $2. So
yeah. So
excellent one,
that
love
is
it.
definitely my thing of the week. So what is yours?
My thing of the week is something that's your fault. I actually last week for the first time played with something that you showed on your channel, and I was very much interested because A little background for people that are not in the United States, because I know that if I have Steve on, we get a lot of people from the UK listening in particular. Jesmonite, which is a really cool substance, is just not a thing in the United States. It's not. I mean, I everybody I've ever seen that worked extensively with Jesmonite lives in Europe, and I'm pretty sure there's some kind of import problem getting it into the United States. You have to kind of, well, I'll get that in there, sneak it into the United States. And there are people on Etsy selling small boxes of it, the kit, and it's just super expensive. So unless you're really dedicated to it, it's not worth it. So Steve showed a couple of weeks ago on his channel a new product called Resincrete. And I finally last week got to try it. And this stuff is freaking magic. It's a powder that you mix with water to the consistency of heavy cream, or what they call in England double cream, and you basically have, I don't know how to describe it. It kinda comes out like a cross between plastic and porcelain. It's the best kind of explanation I can come up with it. It's got the most perfect consistency, and in fact, when I used it the first time, I didn't make enough to fit the mold, and I immediately whipped up a second batch and poured it in right on top. There's no seam line. It fills onto itself beautifully. This stuff is freaking magical, and I can't wait to play with it some more. But definitely check this out if you've ever been interested in dabbling in Jesmonite. This stuff might actually scratch the itch for you, and it's easily available on Amazon, and it's relatively cheap. I think it was
So
$40
if
for the
you
starter kit.
absolutely, but the best way to do at the moment is go to the description on any of my videos using it, because there's a 30% discount on it as well.
Oh, there you go. So Steve will get you 30% off, better than going to Amazon. Go to Steve's link. Plus, Steve gets a nice little kickback for it too.
Yeah, and the other thing is, it's 100% eco-friendly because it's made just from natural materials, and it's so much harder and nicer than plaster of Paris or any of those sorts of things in cement, which I've used a lot of in the past.
Yeah, plaster of Paris, as far as structural integrity, is not great. It looks
No,
cool, but
yeah,
it's very delicate.
very delicate. It has its
Um,
place.
mhm.
I've still got a bag of it in here, and I will still use it for some things. But it has its place. But this is a lot nicer than plaster of Paris, I think.
The finish with no effort on it was that's what blew my mind. Like, the way it's smooth, and my first attempt at it, there is not a single bubble anywhere. There are no bubbles. Like, I don't understand. I've never, and I even said it in the group when I posted my first picture. I'm like, "I don't believe it. This is the first time I've ever nailed something on the first try." It's like, I almost wanna stop now and just say, "No, I had a perfect career with Resincrete. I made one thing and it was perfect." But amazing stuff. It's
Yeah, it is.
definitely worth
And
a look.
did you find when you first made it as well that it became very tactile, that you couldn't stop touching it for after it was cured? Because it
I literally
feels,
have it on my craft table now, and every once in a while I pick it up just because it's so smooth.
yeah,
Like,
it feels
it's
so nice,
ridiculous.
doesn't it? It feels so
It's
nice.
And you know what I like, since since I had a cup mold and that seemed to be a good fit for it. One of the things I like is when you flick it with your fingernail, that sound it makes, that it it's hard to describe. It's not like resin. Resin's nice, it has a nice feeling, it looks cool. This is a very different thing. This almost feels like Bakelite.
Yeah,
That's actually what it feels like. It
yeah,
feels like Bakelite. Holy
yeah,
crap. That's
yeah.
what I've been trying to think, because when you put it in a shiny mold, it comes out
Um,
as shiny as your mold.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah. It doesn't taste like Bakelite though.
There are videos about Bakelite. I think Technology Connections did a whole series on what Bakelite is, why it's important, and why everyone that's Steve and my age talks about it.
It doesn't. I used to have this thing when I was a kid about Bakelite, and I don't know what it was, but I always used to taste it, not eat it, but when I was a young kid, it had this peculiar tang to it if you licked it. I mean, if any of my kids did that when they were children, I would have gone like, no, no, don't do that, don't do that. But you know
That
what I mean?
explains a lot, Steve. That
Yeah, I think
explains
you're
a
right.
lot.
I think I'm Bakelite addled. I'm not recommending to anybody listening this to go and lick Bakelite. Please don't lick it.
That explains why there's always glitter around you. You're compensating for years of
Yeah,
licking Bakelite telephones.
I think
What are you
you're right.
doing? You making a phone call? No, I'm just taking a taste. It's fine.
Yeah, just taking a little taste. Yeah, it's a quirky thing when I was a kid. Talking about glitter actually. I was chatting away I'm a glitter freak. I do love anything that's sparkly and shiny. I'm like a magpie with where these things are concerned. Um,
What you mean you steal it from people?
I think I
Like
might do. But Hemway, a lovely company, Hemway, and I love their glitters and things like that. They picked up on this in one of my videos, and this is why it's worth. You know, I, it just makes my day when these things happen. They sent me this box, massive box of all their glitters and things like that, and it's just like they didn't want anything in return. I mean, they know I'll use it and I'll mention it, but do you know what? It's just lovely when that happens. And
isn't it great?
members and things, they send me stuff all the time to my PO box and people.
My friend Claire Burgess, who's also in the UK, she's a big fan of Hemway glitter also. She
Yeah,
uses it in a lot of her projects. Like
Claire
she's
Burgess. I know a
Claire
Claire.
Claire's Crafty Corner.
Oh right, yeah. Claire's
Yeah,
Crafty
yeah.
Corner. Yeah,
She's a very close friend of mine, and
yeah,
she uses their stuff too. Yeah,
yeah.
that's a brand I've definitely heard of before. I remember. I think the most fun I had was when I ordered the Stuart Semple, the heavy metal paints, and I
Oh
sent
yeah,
those
yeah.
out to you in the UK.
You did. I love
I was
them.
like, Steve, you have to try these.
I
I
love
know
them.
they're insanely expensive, and I know this is totally off brand
Yeah,
for you, but you have to try these paints,
yeah.
and they are. Oh,
They
I've
are
been playing.
awesome.
I've been playing with his color changing paints. Like he has a couple of color shifting
Mm.
paints. And I mean, the man's an evil genius. I just got an email yesterday. He just came out with a new orange paint
Hmm.
now. And I'm like, "Oh god, another Stuart Semple project. That just means I'm going to have to buy it."
Yeah,
I don't even look to see what it is anymore. It's like, "Oh, he came out with something new?
yeah,
Buy." Like I just
yeah.
buy it cuz I'm like, I don't have a need for it now, but I will at some point. But
I absolutely love those paints you sent me, and I have used them now so many times, so
I'm going
many
to change
times on different
I'm going to
projects.
change your life. I'm going to change your life. Something I want you to get, and I want you to include in a video because I want people to understand how cool it is. Okay. You on Amazon, there are battery powered airbrushes, and some of them are actually really good.
Hmm.
I happen to have one that I think is absolutely fantastic. And why I want you in particular to try one
Hmm.
when you use that mirror paint, I want you to just put a tiny bit of it straight into the airbrush
Right. Okay.
and just airbrush with it. I'm telling you, it will change your life. You like shiny, sparkly things?
Yeah.
That mirror paint in an airbrush is the most amazing thing you've ever seen. I'm going to show I got to find the picture. I have it somewhere. I'll send it to you later.
Thanks.
I have a picture of a resin gummy bear that I made and
Hmm.
when I was testing out this paint and I didn't even prime it. I literally just took the mirror paint out of one of my airbrushes and just airbrushed it. Done. And the end result is incredible. It's absolutely incredible. It looks good brushed on because it does self level, but it looks amazing out of an
Yeah.
airbrush.
I'll have to try it.
Um,
I do have an airbrush somewhere. I haven't
yeah,
used
they're
it.
great.
I haven't used it for several years. It is about somewhere, I'm sure.
That's
Um.
why I got the battery operated one because I have a proper one, like a whole kit, like a
Yeah.
proper. I spent a couple of $100 on it, right? And you know
Yeah.
what I use more? I use the battery operated one because it's always charged and on my craft table and ready to take paint.
And that's what I. And that's why I don't bother with the other one because I have to
It's a
get it
hassle.
out, set it up, find it, and
I hate cleaning it. I'm not gonna lie.
yeah.
I hate cleaning it. But other than that, that's the only thing I have to do with this. It's amazing. So
Right.
you,
I will
you know what
definitely
else is amazing? You know what else is amazing?
go on.
The sheer number of people that support this show financially, and those people include Matthew Serio from Artigiano Serio, Big Al Schultz of New York Woodworks, Tori Decker from Tori Did It, Ed Swanson of Ed's Clocks and More, Jake Drews from Make with Jake, Megan Chris from Onyx Designs Woodwork, Christian Neary of Warren Works, Jeff Stein, aka A Weird Guy, Kim and Garrett from Kim and Garrett Make It, Rory Langefeld of RLL Woodworks and DIY, Robert J. Keller, Rebecca Cole of Beck C Designs, Brian Arsenault, the Seven Hills Maker, Lars Coleman of Colorado Multicraft, who, according to Al Schultz, and I agree, is an evil genius, Dave Bauer of Dave Bauer Art, Nick Birchtold of Birchtold Design Build, Jeremy Spees, Mike of Pixels to Prototype, Donald LeBlanc of Fun with Woodworking, Grant Alexander from the Clamp Podcast, Brad Harrison of Brad's Customs, and Billy Polton of Polton Projects. Thank you so much to the people that support this show financially. It is tremendously appreciated. If you can't support the show financially, that's fine too. Share the show, write a review, tell someone about it, turn someone onto it so they'll listen. And that's good for me too. Anything that gets more eyes and ears on this show helps the show tremendously. Sometimes getting more eyes and ears on the show is just about the quality of the guests we have. And I got to be honest with you. I'm getting a little bit mushy here because Steve is one of the coolest people I know. And it has been so cool over the last couple of years to, go from watching you on YouTube late at night when I couldn't sleep to calling you a friend. But I really do appreciate your friendship and all you've done, for me and for the maker community and crafters and people who are trying to find their way and, explore their artistic side a little bit. You've done so much for so many people. And I think I speak for everyone in the group and the people that regularly watch your content when I say that it's just an absolute pleasure to watch someone that's so passionate about what they do and helping other people get into it. It's just been absolutely wonderful, and I appreciate it. And I also appreciate you giving me so much time on the middle of a Sunday afternoon, and I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Vincent, and I really do appreciate that as well. It's very touching, and like I said to you before, I'll always help you out wherever and ever I can. I always will because I value your friendship as well, and I respect what you're doing here. And I think these podcasts, I listen to your podcasts when I'm crafting and when I'm doing things, and I just have them playing in the background, and they're always so warm, inviting. You always have some great guests on there, so thank you. That's very much appreciated.
Thank you, and I'm looking forward to. I'm hoping I'll have you on again before 2 years are up. But
Yep, of course.
it's crazy when I looked because I was like, wow, August of 2021. That's like a lifetime ago,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, I'm actually really surprised how long ago it was. So
Right? Well,
yeah.
but yeah, if people want to follow you and find out more about you, and how can they get the full Steve McDonald experience?
I think the full Steve McDonald experience is just check out my YouTube channel, and then in the description that will tell you how to link with me via Instagram, via Facebook, how to become a member. Anything, everything that you need is in one of the descriptions of every single one of my videos. So
Yeah,
that's
including
really the best
including
way.
all the including all the tool links, which I really do love,
Yeah,
because like every once in a while you'll use something in a video. I'll go, wait, what was that? What was that?
yeah.
And I go, oh no, I need to buy that. Where's the link? Where's the link?
That's
There's
terrible.
the
Do
link.
you know what? That is one of the time-consuming things about doing a video, editing a video, is putting all those links in. Because I don't just put a link to one site; I always put the individual links in, and I never
Mhm.
pick the most expensive option either. So I always try and get the good value for money for people.
And again, this is how you know that, we talked about earlier, but this is how you can tell that what you do is more of a calling than a job. Like, you understand like how important it is to make sure that those links aren't just, oh, here's the first one I found. No, come on. Where's the one that works best for the people that are watching this video? And I think that effort and that love and attention that you put into your content really does show through. And I think that's why people love you so much. And I definitely think you are beloved in our community, especially. And for those of you that aren't sure if, Steve's stuff may be right for you, I understand there are people that are doing like metal fabrication that listen to this show. I totally get it. But I think if you want to be a part of a community that's just a really cool hang with some really nice people who you might be able to help out, it's probably worth it to kick a few bucks over to Steve so that you can join the community and hang out with the rest of us, because it's a good group of people with a lot of really, even if nothing else, inspirational stuff going on. So you
Yeah,
definitely want to check that
we've
out.
got some very talented people in that group, and some very talented people that don't realise they're talented people as well.
I agree with that.
I'm not going to mention a name because I wouldn't want to embarrass them, but we have one person in there that makes jewelry, resin jewelry and bits and pieces, and you know. Whenever she posts anything, it's done very, very humbly. You know exactly who I'm
I
talking
know
about.
exactly who you're talking
And
about. Every time she says like, "Oh, this is okay," I'm like, "I can't do that."
then she mixes it with polymer clays sometimes, and then she posts it, and you
Mhm.
think, and you just think, you know that she's not fishing for compliments because she's
No,
absolutely not fishing for compliments, and her work is just amazing. It's so inspiring. It's
I
beautiful
I
work.
agree.
She sells it far too cheap and gives it away. But yeah, we have a lot of people in that group that don't realise how powerful they are and the support that they give to other people. It's great.
I'm sure a lot of them are gonna be listening to this, and
I
I'm just
hope
gonna
so.
tell you I mean, we're only missing 1/3 of the crazy triumvirate that runs the group here. You know, and she's probably out cursing like a sailor at somebody anyway, but
Yeah,
I will
Carolyn,
say
yeah.
that we all, just for those of you from the group that are watching this or listening to this right now, we appreciate every single one of you
Oh,
also
absolutely,
because you guys
absolutely.
are what makes the group worth coming to, so,
Certainly. I love it. I love, and somebody said to me the other day, how do you manage this? And I said, well, I have to be careful because sometimes I can be on that Facebook group knowing I've got a couple of projects to do. And then I lose myself for 2 or 3 hours in that group,
yeah.
just chatting to people, answering questions, learning or asking questions. How did you do that?
Mhm.
And I will always recommend other crafters as well because someone was talking about alcohol inks. I've never been a lover of alcohol inks until I found the recent ones that I've been using that are actually really quite colour fast. But Daniel Cooper, who's on YouTube, he is a master at alcohol inks and using alcohol inks. So I'm happy to recommend him and his channel and everything. And if everybody subscribes to him that subscribes to me, brilliant, and watches his videos as well, brilliant. You know, because that's what it's about. He's not a member of our channel or in our
Right.
community, but I'll always recommend other people. Same as I will Claire, who you mentioned earlier. I
Mhm.
mean, actually, I wrote an email to Claire recently telling her, and I'd never met her before or spoken to her before. I happened to catch one of her videos because one of the things on YouTube I will not watch is resin videos. I don't watch other people's resin videos, and the reason is I don't want to be influenced by their work and what they
Mhm.
do, and I don't want to be accused of copying or whatever what they do. So I just avoid them. But I happened to catch one of Claire's, and I felt really it was really important for me to send her an email telling her how much I enjoyed her video, but also how much I enjoyed her integrity in
Mm.
calling out somebody else about the fact that she was using their idea. I loved that, and I would always do that as well. And her use of PPE and her approach to videos. I wanted her to know there are other creators out there that respect her because we get a lot of abuse, believe me. Claire's work was exceptional. Her work was exceptional. Her video was exceptional. Her thumbnail was exceptional. But the way that she approached things in her videos was exceptional. Loved it.
You know what I absolutely love? You know what I absolutely love? I love that I discovered the 2 of you around the same time, and you've both become friends of mine. I
Yeah,
absolutely love that. I love that. And sometimes it's just like, yeah, look how many friends you can make if you just move to the UK.
yeah. Well, I mean, I haven't heard from Claire since, I haven't contacted her and she hasn't contacted me. I just wanted her to know that there are other creators out there that really appreciate her integrity and her
Yeah.
dedication to what she's doing. But you never know. Maybe one day Claire and I will get together and we'll do a collaboration.
I can make that happen. I'll pull the both of you into a chat. I don't care.
Yeah,
I'll be like, "Hey, work with each other. I
yeah.
want this."
I think that would be good because I think I love her work. And I I mean, like I say, I don't watch other resiners
Mhm.
videos. I just have to avoid it with a passion. But that I did particularly watch her. So yeah, maybe we should do a
You know,
collaboration.
I had her on this show 8
Yeah,
episodes after I had you on the
yeah,
last time.
yeah.
So, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Steve, for joining me. I
Thank
really
you,
appreciate
Vincent.
it. I'm looking forward to chatting with you again, and thank you all of you for listening. As usual, I appreciate every single one of you, and looking forward to chatting with you again next week. Have a great week, everybody.